Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Brown South Girls Podcast. I am MsTonya, and I've got my co-host here.
KJ, hello everybody.
Hey, girl, how you doing?
I am good. How are you?
I'm good. Happy Sunday.
Yes, happy Sunday.
So, the Brown South Girls, I tell people what it's about. We're here for conversations, a little entertainment, and we're about community. We're just those regular girls in your community who are here to have conversations and discussions. We're just going to talk about stuff and have different topics and have you guys come in and talk to us. And that's what we're going to do. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
I am too. I certainly am. Well, everybody, I think we should probably introduce ourselves. I'm MsTonya. I am a poet. I'm an author. I'm also a caregiver. I am a mother, a daughter, a granddaughter, a sister, a aunt. I'm your friend. I'm a brown girl. And I've got a beautiful, beautiful brown girl. I want you to tell people who you are.
Well, I am KJ. I'm your daughter. I am also a sister, an aunt, an entrepreneur, an artist, your friend, and a brown girl from down south.
Right, right. I tell you what, that pretty much says it right there. And I see we've got people who are coming on in. I thank you guys for joining us. This is something we have been wanting to do for a long time, right?
Yes, for a very long time.
I mean, we talked about it, and over the holidays, actually, we were sitting at the kitchen table, and we were like, you know what? We've been talking about this podcast for far too long. It's time for us to just get started.
Yeah, honestly, a lot has actually started at the kitchen table. It's kind of been years in the making, so I'm glad we're finally here and we're finally sharing with the people. So I'm excited.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, when I think about the conversation is, and when we decide what we're going to talk about, that can be really some of almost anything. We as brown girls, we do a lot in this world. And this week, I put it on KJ. I did. I said, you know what? We're here. We're going to start this show. And why don't you come up with a few topics and let's decide what we're going to talk about. So tell everybody what you decided to choose this time.
Awesome. So it was actually kind of hard trying to figure out what to talk about because my mind was just in so many places. But just because it's kind of been a topic of conversation amongst me and my peers and my friends, I felt like it was good for us to talk about knowing your worth in the workplace, and then also just being a brown girl in the workplace and how to navigate that space as well.
Right. So, hey, you sent me the text and I said, you
Yep.
know what? Those are two very good topics. We want to talk about the workforce, what we're doing here in today's workforce. And when you think about it, COVID has really forced a lot of us to think about what we're actually doing in the workplace. It really, really has. It forced a lot of people to be in their homes. A lot of people, job situations have changed. In what ways did COVID affect you, or did COVID affect your workforce situation any at all?
I definitely think it did, just because I work in a space where you kind of have to constantly be around people. But because I work in a housing situation, it was kind of like, okay, well, if students are going to be at school, they got to have somewhere to live. And if they need somewhere to live, people have to be there to work. And so while it did kind of change things really early on in the beginning, once we kind of tried to figure out what was going on, it really kind of just went back to normal almost.
You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. I mean, I feel like for me in particular, um, it really changed a lot because I was out there and I do a lot of community and I do a lot of live events. I do a lot of speaking engagements. I host different events. So it really kind of put a lot of the things that I do inside of the community, it put it on the back burner, or at least that's what I thought. And then I realized, wait a minute, there's a way for us to get back out here, or at least for me specifically to get back out here, and that had to do with technology and social media. And I realized that we could do live streams. And so I wanted to learn how to do live streams. It was something that kind of scared me in the beginning, to be honest, because as a content creator I would really prefer to produce a piece. When you go live, there's so many different things going on. And just like right now, I've got, this whole setup in front of me, and I've got all of these controls that I have to kind of man behind here. And I was like, how am I going to be able to do that and host at the same time? But I learned.
You did?
I did. You know? And so that's what we're doing now. And that's how I was able to stay involved with communities, stay involved with the works that I like to do, stay involved with sharing my art, sharing my poetry. And that has been just like a savior for me. I learned this new platform, Streamyard, which I recommend people out there who are interested in doing live stream events. Look into StreamYard. It's a fairly easy learning curve. I mean, just like anything else, you're going to have to practice, you're going to have to do your research, but it's really simple. I'm telling you, from the time that I started until now, they have improved so much. So there's a lot that you can do. But what I want to ask you as a young person in the workforce, uh, tell me what young people think about the workforce right now. Where are you guys' minds at, and what is having a job, or what is job security like for you all?
I can definitely say right now, especially with my generation, the workforce is so different from what it used to be, even from what it was when I got my like first ever job. I think we are now at a point where we're realizing our worth, and then kind of looking at, the job and the job description and the actual work that we're doing and the compensation, and starting to think like, okay, is this really my worth? Like, am I really getting what I deserve in this position? Am I really out here doing the best that I can? Am I doing something that I want to do? And while I think we do have job security, I don't think we're in the headspace where we feel like that's something we have to have. Like, we're not afraid to say, you know what, this isn't for me. I'm going to go find something else. And then we go out and do it. So it's really interesting, and it's interesting to see, but I'm also kind of proud of my generation, because it's like at some point you got to know when enough is enough and when you just need to do something else.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Now, you're in the 20 something category. Me,
You know,
I'm in the 50 plus category, and I'm from a generation of, listen, our parents told us you got to find you a good job, get you some benefits, and when you find a good job, you stay on that job and you retire from that job after 25, 30 years. So that is the background that I come from. And I don't know necessarily that was such a great idea, because I feel like a lot of people found themselves in jobs and in careers that they probably don't like that much, but they stayed because of what was considered job security. They believed this thing, like they had a good job. Now, does your generation believe that there's a such thing as having a good job?
I think we do. I really think it all started when they told us we might not get retirement benefits. So that whole having to retire from a job thing went out the window. Benefits are also a little expensive, but that's another topic for another day. But I really think we just, if it's not something we don't want to do and it's not something we're passionate about, we're okay stepping away from it to pursue other things. So, yeah, that's really what it is with us.
I got you. And that makes a whole lot of sense. It really, really does. Um, and like I said, that's the old school method. And I'm kind of glad that that's out of the way, because I feel like being happy and putting your peace and having a peace of mind means a whole lot more than being in a job or a career that you really don't like.
Yeah.
You don't want to wake up in the morning. So I like what you said about your generation. You're not afraid to step out there, but speak about some of the mental health aspects and what you guys consider. How does that relate to your career and to jobs that you take?
I think, well, for one, I think because it's becoming less of a taboo to talk about your mental health and to, let people know what's going on, and just finally realizing that at times to actually take our mental health into consideration, and we sit down and think about what's contributing to the way that we're feeling. Why is it that I don't want to go to work and do this job, or things of that nature? So because it's becoming more acceptable to talk about in open spaces, we're actually looking at these things and saying, okay, if this isn't good for me, if this is not good for my mental health, it's going to affect my physical health, and now I need to put myself first.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, me being old school, I took some notes. So even though we're
Mm-hmm.
here and I'm using technology, I still got my notebook. I'm never going to get away from the pen and the pad. But, when you decided to pick this topic, I felt like I wanted to just take a few key notes. And there might be a few things that I feel like I could hit that maybe people might be able to relate to. And for some of you out there who are watching now, give us some comments and let us know what you think about today's workforce, the old generation versus the new generation. How do you feel about that, and where do you stand? Now, a note that I took here is, don't even consider your parents' idea of what a career path should be for you. You shouldn't really consider that. And I say that because they had their career choices. They did. And if they didn't pursue that, then guess what? That's too bad. I mean, it's just really not fair for them to put that on you. So I feel like as a young person, you're young once. Go out there, explore, do the things that you want to do. Now, of course, life is going to be life, and you have to have a way to live. You want to be able to support yourself. So I know that that plays a lot into it. But listen, you cannot consider what your parents' idea for a job or for a career path is going to be for you. What do you feel about that, and what are some of your peers thinking about that, in terms of their parents want them to do certain things or want them to choose a certain job career?
Well, personally, and I'm not just saying this because you're my mom, but I never felt pressure to take a certain career path. I mean, my parents always made sure like I knew what I was good at. I knew where my talents lied, but it was never like, oh, you need to do this, that, or the third. So it was really up to me to decide what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. And I think that's the same case for a lot of my friends and a lot of my peers. We kind of just were able to fall into what we were good at and things that we liked. And we got a lot of support from our parents. Now, because I work with students, I do see a lot of students who still have the parents who tell them, okay, you have to go to school and do this, or you have to be a doctor, you have to be a lawyer. And I can see the stress that that puts on kids. So I definitely appreciate the fact that I didn't have that stress. Yeah, because I don't know if I would have been as happy if I had to follow a specific path.
I got you. Well, I tell you what, that just wasn't my idea of parenting. I have my own life. Yes, I have children, but they have their own life too. And to me, they're not mine. It's a blessing to have them in my life. I certainly love them as any good parent would, but I want them to make their own decisions, find their own path. Try different things. If you like something, you like it. Try it. If you don't like it, listen. Don't even lie to yourself. And that's another note that I took. People have got to stop lying to themselves. If you know you don't like a job, you have to leave it. You have to. You have to. Do you want to speak on that a little bit?
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, because at some point, what is it costing you to stay at the job if you don't like it? If you're dreading going to work, if you're dreading being there, like it just doesn't make sense because you're not only doing a disservice to the company, you're doing a disservice to yourself. You're not putting your best stuff out there, you're not giving the best work you can give. And so, really, if you're not happy, it's so much easier to find something else than to stay somewhere you don't want to be.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've got a comment here from Io. How you doing, Io? Good to see you
Hi.
here in the conversation with us. Another brown girl. She says that the youth are more entrepreneurs where elders are employees, bringing age gaps through.
Hmm.
That's very true. I really find young people looking into entrepreneurship a lot more. And not to say that that's an easy path, because it certainly isn't. If you're going to decide to be a part of a business or run a business, that's a lot of work. It
Yeah.
really is. Do you have any young people or some of your peers who happen to be entrepreneurs? And what are some of the things that they discuss about having their own business versus having a job?
Yes, I do. I have a couple of friends that are entrepreneurs. Love them, so proud of them. And just, the main thing for one is kind of like you really aren't working a 9 to 5 anymore, but instead, depending on what your business is, you're kind of just giving up a lot more of your time because you have to work with clients, you have to set your hours, and then all the work you have to do behind the scenes. It's just so much that you have to put into being an entrepreneur. And then there is the issue sometimes of not having that stability because, at any point, something can happen with clients or customers and you don't know when the next one's going to come through. So you also have to be really great and stay up to date with your promotions and everything. And so while it's not easy, they are all doing something that they love. And so it makes it definitely tolerable. So it's not as bad as saying, okay, I have to go to a job I don't like. It's just I have to put a lot more work into something that I enjoy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And really, today, like when I was growing up, we didn't have the internet. You could have never even told me. I could have never even imagined that we could be doing something like what we're doing right now. And so there's so many advantages with technology today that there's many things that you can do. There's many things that you can do within the space of social media, in spaces of being content creators, and also along with being an entrepreneur, you really have to couple that with technology, because you want to be in those social media spaces. You also want to be in those spaces of YouTube and sharing that. And I've watched people who have navigated a career through social media and also using YouTube. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I have also seen that as well. A lot of young people starting careers through YouTube, being discovered on YouTube. And I mean, it makes sense. My whole thing is if we're going to be on social media all the time anyway, at least find some time to make social media work for you. Like, it's one thing to just be a consumer, but if you're going to have a business or if you want to be a content creator, you might as well go ahead and, make your social media make some money too. So you're not just, giving away your free time. Do something with it.
Absolutely. And so, like what we're doing right now, like I watch a lot of people on YouTube start YouTube channels. I watch people start podcasts and video podcasts, like what we're doing. And I love it. I love the idea that we can share information with each other. I love the idea that people are out there offering courses and helping you discover things that you might want to do. And they also are helping you become better at some of the things that you're doing. And that kind of brings me to our first guest that we actually have on this episode. And she actually has a podcast, Dear Sis Podcast, and she's on all platforms. We got an opportunity to talk to her. It was a whole lot of fun. We recorded that interview with her. And so I think right now what we should do is let people see our little interview and some highlights from Dear Sis. What you think about that?
Definitely. She dropped some really great gems, so make sure you listen to her.
Yeah. She's real good. She was open. She shared a lot of information, some things that I really didn't know about podcasting. And let's get in. Dear Sis, MJ, how you feeling?
I'm feeling well. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Good. We are excited to have you. This is what we want to do, guys. We want to let you guys get an opportunity to understand what it's like to have a podcast, getting into podcasting. And we've got somebody here who has been podcasting for a while. I'm going to let her talk to you about how she got started. Maybe you might have some ideas of how you can get started. It's 2022 and you want to do something different, and maybe a podcast might be the way for you. Now we're doing a video podcast, but there's also the audio podcast. And so she's going to give us some information about how to get that done, what that lane is like, because I have no idea.
I thought about it. I have some really good conversations with myself. I just don't know how to translate that to let the people hear.
I understand. There's a whole lot out here that people can get into, like how we're taking that step and we're taking ours to YouTube and we're making ours more of a video podcast. But like I said, there's so much you guys can do. And there is residual income in this game. So I am going to bring Miss MJ into the stream.
Hi, thank you. Yes.
All right. Let me ask you a question, MJ, because I've listened to your podcast, this, and I'm telling you, you get in there raw, open, you say what you need to say. I like how you talk to your guests. I was listening to one today where you were in there with KDD, and you just talk about a whole lot of different subjects, and we have a host of ideas and people that you can talk to. Well, what I want to ask you is this. Why a podcast? Why did you feel like that was good for you?
Ooh, I get this question asked a lot. Back in 2018, I was on social media and I created a propaganda where I was talking to different women from all over the world and doing videos and conference calls, but I wanted to reach a higher platform. So I decided that podcasting would be the next best thing for me. And one day I was working at a local bar here in town where I live in Princeton, New Jersey. And a gentleman came in and his name is James Peoples. And he said to me, MJ, you ever thought about having your own podcast show? I literally jumped in his lap because that's what I've always wanted to do. Mind you, this was what, 2019? Yes, 2019, yes. And I jumped in his lap, and the next day I was with the producer at New Pod City Podcast Network, and Dear Sis was birthed.
What made you feel like you could enter that field?
Because I felt like it was all audio, and I felt like I was the voice of reason to most women out there, to be quite honest. And it gave me an opportunity to be myself, where it was no judgment, no flaws, just like going in unapologetically and just yourself. And that's what I decided I wanted to do, just jump right into that room. Believe it or not, people believe like podcasting is saturated. It is not saturated. It's only 2 million podcasters and 800,000 podcasters are alive.
Are you serious?
I'm serious as a heart attack. And oftentimes, after the 7th show, podcasters stop.
Why do you think that is?
They believe no one's listening when a lot of people are listening. They want revenue. It's not like a quick fix overnight. It's not as if you played the lottery and you hit the next day. It's basically taking a chance. And some people don't want to stick it out.
What are some tips that you could give people and kind of guide them towards the consistency of being there and being there for their audience?
I would say the feedback from social media, if you have a platform, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a podcast platform. If you have a platform on social media and you're letting your friends and family and your audience know where you are, and just more feedback and the controversy that comes with it. We all love controversy, and then the drama that comes with it. And then, of course, you got your naysayers. So that's what drives me, because I want more. Like, okay, you want more of me? I'm gonna bring it to the table. So yeah, I like it. I love it. I eat, sleep, breathe podcasting.
What are some of the advantages of having a podcast? I know that people have their social media platforms, and a lot of people are on like the YouTubes and the Instagrams, and a lot of them go live. So in a way, that is almost like a podcast, right?
It is almost like a podcast, but you want your own audience. You want to be able to steal the people off of YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all the social media platforms. You want to have them enter your own home because they get a feel of who you are. It's more personable.
So what are some ways of making revenue with the podcast besides just having the podcast itself?
Merch, do merch, t-shirts, mugs, hats, glasses, pencils, pens, book bags, sneakers, playing cards, you name it.
Yeah, I'm strolling right now through some of your merch. And I see you got your mug here. You got your mugs.
Dear Sis mug, correct. Yep. T-shirts, pillow, which I have in my room now. Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So there's just so much that people can do. There is residual income.
Absolutely.
In this game.
You got to stay at it.
It's hard.
It is. And I was just about to say that, MsTonya, it's hard. And KJ, it's not as easy as people think, but again, consistency is key. And I talk about this on my podcast all the time. We were on lockdown for 19 months. I was on the 19th month bid that I have nothing to do with. We all were. Would you agree?
I do. Yeah. Listen, we have been locked down.
Like literally.
Yeah. Really. You know, we kind of got an opportunity to kind of creep back out there a little bit, and then boom, they sucked us right back in. So we back in again.
Yes, we are. We're back in jail.
Well, I'm gonna let KJ ask a few questions. I know she has something that she wants to ask you.
How did you get past, I would say for me, it's like a mental block of like, okay, I want to do this podcast. I know I have good ideas, but how did you get to the point where you're like, yes, I'm going to sit down and I'm just going to put it out and see what the world thinks of it?
How did I get, you know what? I had supportive family. Mm-hmm. I definitely had supportive family. And then I had a studio that I could take advantage of. And the owner pushed me as well. He was like, if you want this as bad as you say you do, I'm here to help. I'm here to push you. I'm here to help you. I'm here to do all great things with you. So let's go. And it was like no turning back. And once I got started, I didn't stop. It was like a high.
I believe it. I definitely believe it.
I couldn't stop. And now it's definitely no stopping me now.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You are on a roll.
It's a marathon. It's not a race.
Yeah, that's the part.
It's not a race.
It definitely is.
It's not a race.
So when you started, like, where did you think this was going to go?
You know what, to be honest with you, KJ, when I first started, I was nervous because I didn't think nobody would want to listen to me. They're like, who's this girl? Who's this dear sis? This black girl. She up here talking shit. She don't know what she's saying. Nobody want to hear her. But then I started making sense. and everyone finds me very interesting. I've been getting that a lot lately. I'm interesting, and they just want to know more. And so I knew I had to use my voice to invite them to Dear Sis podcast to learn more about who I am.
A little brown girl advice. What would you tell 20-something MJ?
I know two things I would know. Leave after the first lie and know your worth. Always bet on yourself, because you will never disappoint you. Even though you may feel like you did, it's not really a disappointment. It's just that a life lesson. You move on. Always bet on yourself, KJ. I'm telling you, bet on you.
What are some topics that you feel like us as brown girls really need to sit down and discuss with each other more often?
Generational curses that we're afraid to discuss because we don't want to hear what our family have to say, or maybe our aunties, our sisters, our cousins. That is the root. The generational curses are the worst. Because you're wondering why is all of this happened to me? Because someone did not break the cycle to show you a better way.
We're not talking about the issues. So if we don't talk about the issues, there's no way that we're going to be able to break a cycle, because what are we breaking? We don't even know what we're breaking.
Exactly. Right. I just think we should talk about more sisterhood. Like, how can we get along? What can we do to make each other feel better? Be great, be greater. The communication, the talent, the skill. What did you do? We're always afraid to ask. Anything we feel like we can master, but at the same time, when we meet that person that we want to do something with, I want to use just like collaborate.
I feel you. And I tell you something, that is what I really love and adore about you.
Oh, thank you.
Serious, because you're the type of sister who is willing to share any information on how to get something done, how you did it. Even if you're figuring it out, you're sharing that information like completely along the way.
Yes. And a lot of times people don't want to do it first. So you be like, I'll do it. I'll do it first. I'll do it. Bump it. I'll do it. I'll take the risk.
I got my Dear Sis playing cards in the mail. I got mine already.
Yes.
Okay. But let me just.
Thank you.
Y'all got to get your own. You got to get your own. Really.
And you're going to laugh. I cannot play cards, KJ.
What?
I don't
Stop
know
playing.
Nothing. I don't know how to play spades, poker, none of that. No. War. Nope.
Wow.
But it didn't matter if I knew how to play cards or not.
Right.
I knew half the world enjoyed playing cards.
Well, I tell you what, it is always a pleasure to get to talk to a sister. I thank you for supporting us and coming on the show.
No problem.
Is there anything that you could kind of leave us with? I don't know. Maybe should we take our podcast into an audio podcast, you think?
Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you why. Because if you want to lay your hair down and be your natural self, you do audio, because it's almost like you shooting the shot.
I got you. So you're giving us some stuff to think about. You really are. Let people know where they can find you and how they can find you.
Yes, you can find me, Dear Sis Podcast, everywhere podcast platforms are. Dear Sis Podcast on IG, Dear Sis Podcast on Facebook, and dearsis.world.
Wow. She shared a lot of good information. She was like, she gave us the game. And those were just some of the highlights. And I really agree with her. It's like, you've got to she put a lot of gems in there. Besides telling us about the podcast, she was talking about knowing your worth. Right. And I find that really interesting, because that happens to be one of the topics that you chose, KJ. And I feel like as Black women out here, we really need to know our worth. We absolutely need to know our worth. So what I want to ask you is, with the younger generation, do you all know your worth?
I think we're in the process of learning how to figure out our worth, and we are more eager to know our worth than we were kind of growing up and in our early 20 ages. It's just something you kind of have to learn how to do, though. It's not like you can just step out there and say, oh, yeah, I know who I am. And if you can, hats off to you. But it's definitely a process that I think we're learning and we're growing into, and we're becoming more okay once we find out what our worth is.
Okay, well, let me ask this question then. In terms of being in the workforce, and if you feel like you know your worth, how are you all entering the workforce? And do you know your worth enough to negotiate and ask for a certain salary? Tell me a little bit about what entering the workforce is for younger people, our young brown girls out here. And do you value yourself enough to ask for what you want? How are you navigating that?
I can say for myself, when I first entered the workforce, like I got my first like big girl job, I didn't know how to negotiate my salary. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't want to, give a price that was too high and they not give me the job. And so I kind of just settled and accepted what I was given, because in my mind, I feel like if this is what they are offering, then that clearly must be what the position is worth. And I didn't really take into account what I was going to bring to the table. And so after I got some experience under my belt and I worked for a couple of years, and I started to learn what I have to offer and that I have many talents that I can use across the board. I then realized, okay, so I can negotiate my salary, because if they're going to say, hey, you're good at this, you should do this. And hey, you're good at this, can you do this for us? I want to make sure my salary covers all the other duties as assigned, and just knowing that I'm going to give my best work regardless. And so you can't shortchange me for if you want greatness, pretty much.
I got you. I got you. Let me ask this question then. If you're in terms of negotiating your value and negotiating your worth, how do you even know, or do you know?
I honestly, now I have started and gone and look at what like the top people in the position that I am looking for can make. Like, what is the absolute most they can make? And then I also look at the bare minimum. So I make sure I'm not getting given the bare minimum as well. And then I just look at the qualifications of the job, and I see like what talents do I have and what skills have I learned that are transferable, and how much of this is really going to be something that I can give my all to. And then I just kind of go from there. Like, if I'm going to give so much time and so much energy to a job, and I still want to be able to live a great lifestyle, I love to eat and I love to travel. Got to think about that too. So I need to make sure that all of my bases are covered when I'm thinking about what I'm willing to allow someone to pay me for a position.
Well, you know what? I'm glad that you said that, because as an older person, I feel like for the younger generation, and what some young girls need to know when they're about to navigate into their first careers and their first jobs, there's some key things that you really need to think about. And like I said, don't be afraid to pull out that old school tablet and take a pen. It is your friend, I promise you. And you need to make a list. You write 2 columns. You need to figure out what your lifestyle is. And by that, I mean, where are you going to live? How much is your rent? You need to know what your utility bills are going to be, your cell phone, your internet connection. I heard you mentioning you like to eat. If you like to go out, where you like to eat, you want to travel. All of those things cost, and so you need to know what your lifestyle expenses are going to be a month. You need to know that you're going to be able to cover those, and not just cover them. It's about more than that, because you don't want to get yourself stuck into a situation where you've got this job and you got this career. You were afraid to negotiate for your pay or your salary, and then you find yourself working paycheck to paycheck. That's just not a good place to be in at all. So that is something that I would recommend young people to do, because you've got to know your value, you've got to know your worth. So what are they going to pay me? What is the minimum that I am willing to negotiate my time for this salary to do this job? Right?
Yeah, definitely. And then also think about the time that you have to put into it as well, because Setting boundaries, I think, in the workplace is also a very important part of knowing your worth, just because you don't need to let any job stress you out. Like, make sure you give yourself time for you to do what you like, do what you love, to go get those meals, take those trips, and, so that you can give your best self when it is time for you to do work.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I tell you what, in terms of knowing your worth and knowing your value, a lot of people, I feel like, especially brown girls, I don't know so much that they find it easy to do because they find themselves in positions and in workplaces with other people. And a lot of the time, they're making the lowest salaries. There's people who don't look like you, who are from a different culture, who are a different, um, different culture, different sex, and you find out that you're not making the same amount of money for the same amount of work. And that happens to us so much in the workplace. So that's why I champion everyone, especially as brown girls, knowing your worth. Is there anything else that you kind of want to just put in there and a little extra key that you could probably give to young people?
Yeah, I think to go along with knowing your worth, and especially being a brown girl in the workforce, make it your mission to find a mentor. Go out there and find somebody that looks like you, that's doing what you want to do, because there are so many brown women out there that want to help the next brown girl be successful and reach their dreams and get to where they want to be. So I definitely say, make sure you make those mentors, network, have a group of friends who are, you know, along the same line and still have similar goals and really trying to get to the next level. You want to make sure you just keep yourself surrounded by good people, have a good circle, make sure you have people that'll push you, and also have people that'll understand what you're going through, and then have people that will help you as well.
Absolutely. I agree with you on that. You got to do that. And I like what you said about finding a mentor. And mentors are so important to success. They are. They have been where you've been. They've made some of the mistakes that you don't necessarily have to make. And they certainly are there to offer you any advice. Anybody who is successful in their career is going to be willing to share that information with someone who is coming up behind them. That's what mentors are for. And so you're right. So we talked about some things about the value and some of the things about the mentorship and things that you should do when you're in the workforce. But let's talk about some of the things that aren't so great. What happens when you're at a job or in a position that you don't like?
Well, that's definitely an interesting space to be in, I can say for sure, because you just aren't able to be your best self. You aren't able to produce great work. And I know if y'all are anything like me, I feel good when I do good work. And so when I know I'm not giving my best, that just adds like another stack of discouragement on top of everything else I'm dealing with. And so for me, what I had to learn to do was to, like I said earlier, set those boundaries, know what I can and cannot give, what I will and will not do, what time outside of my work time will be dedicated for work, and then just do my best to protect my energy and protect my peace until I can say peace out.
Oh, wow. I like that. Protect my peace until I can say peace. Is that what it is?
Yep.
I'm going to have
Because
to
you're in
write that down.
control.
You're in
That's
control.
important. You're right. And that's very important. Your peace is so important. How can you go to work if you don't like it? You're not going to want to get out of bed. You're going to be discouraged. You're not going to do a good job. And that's just not the right way to be, and that's not how you want to be. It's very discouraging. So I like the fact that young people are really looking towards their mental health and looking towards having peace. It's not about just making money, because if you're making money but you're not happy, what's the point?
Right.
What is the point? Well, we talked about that. So I want to talk about, we've heard these things before, at least in my generation. I've heard it a lot. So I'll ask you about this. But I've heard often that a lot of people will say, or I've heard women say, I don't like working in places where there's a lot of women. It can get catty. I don't like it. It's not a good place for me. What are young people and young brown girls thinking about working in the workplace with other brown girls?
So for me, when I first started working, I was never really in a space where I was around a lot of other brown women. Some cases, I was the only woman. And so it's like, oh boy, do I speak up? Do I not speak up? I don't want to be the aggressive Black woman at work, but then I don't want people to overlook my ideas as well. So I had to learn how to navigate that space. But now that I'm in a space where I am at least able to see more brown women in these positions of power and just doing phenomenal things, it's really great and inspiring for me just to see Black excellence all around me everywhere I go. Every day at work has been really good and just really empowering to know, like, okay, I'm not the only brown girl in this space. So now I feel more comfortable. I feel like I can be myself and I can pretty almost turn off the code switch for sure.
That's good. That's really good. And I tell you something, for the women who are in those situations where they feel like they can't work with other brown women, or they feel like, it's just really stressful, or they have a boss who is not being the best boss that they could be. One key thing that I've learned about that is typically those are women who are just not confident. They're not confident in themselves. They may pretend to be, and because they have a certain position, they allow that position to be their confidence, but they lack a certain confidence. And so when they're like that, they're just not useful or helpful to other people because they feel like somebody's coming to take something for them. They feel like they don't have job security. And that's that type of woman. That type of woman feels like, oh no, I can't teach her everything because she's going to come and take my job. Well, if you're doing a good job, that's not something that you have to worry about. And if you come across women who are like that, that's one thing to have in your mind. You might not want to take that as personal, or you might just kind of want to think about it. But just know that that's someone who's just not confident, someone who's not doing the best job that they could be doing. Because if they were, I promise you, they'd be doing everything to make sure that you're better and to make sure that you can elevate. Because you don't want to be in a job position where you can't grow, right?
Precisely. And I feel like I definitely had to learn to stop taking it personal when I did encounter those types of women, because I always felt like, oh, well, what am I doing wrong? Like, what do they have against me? And I had to learn that it's not always about me. It's not something that I did. And once I learned that, and then I also know in my mind, I don't come to a job to stay in the same position, but I'm also not in the job like going after the person above me. I just want to grow and be better. And I feel like if you're confident in your position, like you said, and you have that mindset that you want to grow and be better, you won't really have any problem helping the next person do that too.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Well, you happen to be in a position where you're around a lot of brown people, a lot of brown girls, and that's a good thing. And I'm happy that you're having a good experience with that. But I know, because I do know you've been in positions where you weren't around a lot of brown people. Talk about and share some of those experiences, and tell us what it was like.
For me, it was interesting. I won't say it was bad because I don't ever feel like it was bad, but it was definitely something I had to learn how to navigate because, I mean, coming up through school, I was in a space where I was around a lot of brown people. And then I went to college and that completely changed. And then I got another job out of college and that still wasn't the case. And so what I realized is when I noticed that I'm one of the few brown people in a space, but there are also other brown people and especially brown girls that I can influence, I want to make sure that I'm reaching out to them and that they know that, hey, just because there are only a few of us doesn't mean that we can't be great or we have to dim our light for any reason. Go ahead and be great. Don't be afraid and do what you have to do. So that's something that I learned just being in those spaces and learning that, I have the same value I had when I was in a room full of brown people that I do when I'm the only person in the room.
Right. Right. Let me ask you this. When you found yourself in situations where you were one of the few brown people in the space, did you feel a certain responsibility by being the only brown person? Did that have like an influence on how you did your job, or was there an influence on how you felt that you were to be perceived while working in those situations?
Yes. So in the beginning, I definitely felt like I didn't know when I should speak up, when I should share my ideas, what I should do and what I shouldn't do. But as I just grew as a person and grew more comfortable in my positions, I felt kind of good, like walking into a space and it's like, oh, am I the only brown girl or am I the only brown person? Because now when they see all the greatness that's going to come from the work that I'm doing and just everything that I have to put on the table, I want them to know, like, yeah, I might be the only brown girl in this space, but I'm going to represent for brown people and I'm going to do it well. I don't feel like it's my responsibility to do it, but it just kind of makes me like, yeah, I'm going to show y'all today.
Absolutely. Well, that's good. That's real good. I like the fact that we can have these type of conversations because there's always going to be young people entering the workforce, young brown girls coming up and moving into those next stages of their life. And I feel like if they can hear somebody have a conversation, if they don't have the mentorship, if they can listen to somebody, just like a Dear Sis podcast, just like this podcast, our video podcast that we're having, they get an opportunity to hear what people experience. So they kind of know how to make their moves. They have a better way of navigating in those environments. And so that's really the main reason I wanted to do this particular podcast. And I felt like with me being from one generation and you being from another generation, it would allow us to have, some opinions that were maybe a little bit old school, but also some opinions that were very much into today.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you this. Although you're still very young, but if you
Yeah.
had to give a young person who would be entering the workforce coming up soon, who'll be a graduate in this spring, what's some key pieces of advice that you might give them?
One, I would tell them go big or go home. Depending on what you did throughout your collegiate career, you have learned a lot of skills that can transfer to a lot of different positions. So don't even be discouraged if you don't find a position that's in your major or along the path that you think you were supposed to be on after graduation, because it doesn't always happen. But in that case, just look for something that can help you grow in the areas where you know you need to grow or you want to continue to grow so that you can still get to where you want to be. Transferable skills are going to be your best friend. And then, kind of like we've been talking about this whole podcast, don't be afraid to know your worth. The same way you have to ask financial aid for money, you got to ask these employers for money because they have it and they'll give it to you. But if you don't ask, then you get the short end of the stick. So know your worth and know your skills.
Absolutely. You brought something up. You mentioned financial aid, and that kind of made me think about this. Do you find that young people coming out of college, do you find that they are discouraged and they might take jobs that they may not want to take because they feel some type of obligation because they're walking directly into a debt? What do you
So
think? What are you guys talking about when it comes to that?
So when I was graduating college, I can definitely say that was the feeling like, oh, snap, I got to get a job because I got to pay these student loans back. But as we've progressed and grown in the work world and you realize no matter how much money you pay them, it's going to go down very small amounts at a time. A lot of us are just kind of in the mindset of, listen, I'm going to pay you. You're going to get your money when you get it. You know, you're going to get it on time. However many years it takes is how many years it takes. It's almost like the debt is on the back burner. Like, we know it's there. Just take your money and go. But I'm not going to let that be the basis for any of the decisions that I make going forward in my life. Like, I'm not going to say I have to take this job because I have to pay student loans. It might be I have to take this job because I got to pay rent. But, I think the student loan part has become less of a burden on us, especially when it comes to looking for jobs and talking about salaries.
Okay. Okay. Well, brown girl, we tackled those two topics,
Mm-hmm.
and I just feel like very useful information. I hope that we will have some people who will come on through with comments. I see some ladies who are telling us hello on YouTube. How you doing, Latifa? It's good to see you in here. I see that. All right, we had Kaylin, so she was watching with us. How you doing? Thank you for coming in. Got some crazy people in the comments too. There's some
Yeah.
crazy stuff in there.
We're going to leave them over there.
We're not going to bring up all the comments. You
Mm-mm.
know, I'm looking at it, and it's like when you're on social media and you're doing this thing, you never know who's watching.
Right.
You really don't. You don't know who's
All
watching. If
people.
I could tell you guys, but it's not worth telling you. But we've got some people here who are doing some really crazy things. So we're not going to let you know what they're talking about.
Mm-mm.
Not at all. Let me ask you a question here. What made you agree to do a podcast with your mother?
Well, one, because you're my mom. But
That's
no,
not a good reason.
well, I think it is because I mean, I feel like we're a dynamic duo. We have a good time. And I just think it being me and you, it made it easier for me because I am very quick to get in my head, even if it's something that I'm doing by myself. And so just having that comfort of knowing, like, oh, I'm doing this with my mom. And we've kind of been doing this all my life, just not necessarily on camera or recorded. And so it kind of was a good stepping stone for me to get in there. And then we're also able to hold each other accountable to make sure we actually do this and actually get it done. And, you know, there's no discouragement. So that's really why I agreed. I was like, yeah, I'll do it.
All right. I like what you said there. You said that we actually get to hold each other accountable. And what I want to say to someone out there who is thinking about doing a video podcast, starting your YouTube channel, it is a cool thing to have someone to kind of interact with. And like you said, have someone kind of hold you accountable. But also, you've got to divide that work because doing something like this is really a lot of work. I don't want you to believe anything that the people have told you about the fact that you can just start a video podcast or start a YouTube channel and some big magical thing is going to happen, because that's not true. It is still work. And you're going to have, if you want to be successful with that, you're going to have to find someone who's going to be able to help with marketing, help with graphics, help with the content. And there's some areas in the social media that I'm just not really all that great at. I don't do TikTok.
I do.
Yes. And so I felt like, in terms of the difference in generation, you kind of handling a lot of that stuff was really good for me. Now, I have a media background, I have a background in graphics. So when I get graphics done and I can send stuff to you and you make sure that they get up, that's what a team does. That's really what a team does. And like you said, in terms of keeping each other accountable, like yesterday, for instance, I'll just share this with you guys. We actually did a little run through. We did a little rehearsal. We did, because that's important. You want to make sure that you're able to get it done. You don't know what little hiccups are going to happen. It is live. And like I told you, I kind of shied away from doing lives for a long time for that very same reason, because there's not as much control as I would like it to be. I don't know what would happen. You know, sometimes you're going to get some buffering, but because of COVID-19, everybody's doing live now. We
Yeah.
watch it on the news. We watch big television hosts do lives and have people come in and live stream them in. And so we're kind of used to seeing the little oops, the things, the little technical difficulties. So that kind of took a little bit of the weight off of my shoulders. But that was one thing that really kind of scared me a lot. I'm like, it's so much work, one person, I'm just not going to be able to do it. And I had to be honest with myself. As much as I can create and as many ideas as I have, I can't do it all by myself. So don't ever feel like you have to do it by yourself. Find someone. It may not be your mother, it may not be your daughter, but it could be a friend. It could be someone that you can build a chemistry with, or you know that you have good conversations with, and you guys get in there and start. And that's kind of like what we did. We did kind of jump right in here. Um, we look to grow. We look to grow with you guys. I'm looking over here in my chat a little bit. I'm not getting all of the comments that I like to have come up. I notice my people on Facebook. I'm not seeing their comments, but I'm seeing my people's comments from um, YouTube. And Kaylin said, "It's so natural." Well, thank you, thank you. That's all we can do. But I'll tell you this, and you can share this too, Khalil, because we were talking about this when we did our run through yesterday. We're still nervous, right?
Yes. Yes, very.
Yes. Do not think that we're not nervous, and that's not a bad thing. Anytime you're nervous about doing something, whatever type of performance that is, and I get that a lot with poets when I host open mics, they often feel like, they're a little shy. They don't want to get on the mic. They have a little fear, but I let them know that's natural. You're feeling that because you want to be good at it, and you're supposed to be. So anybody who does something and they don't feel any of those nerves, I don't know what you got going on, because I feel it all the time.
Right.
All right, we got Kaylin in here with another comment. Go ahead and read that, Kalia.
It says, I love your mother-daughter relationship. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Well, guess what? I didn't have a choice. She's my daughter.
Yeah.
I got lucky. I got really, really lucky. But I got to let y'all know, I do have this beautiful brown girl for a daughter, but I also have a beautiful brown boy. I have a
Mhm.
son, so I enjoy being a mother. I enjoy having this conversation. I enjoy you guys coming in here with us. And Khalid, believe it or not, I'm looking at the timer up here, and we've been up here over an hour.
What?
How long did we say we were going to do this?
I don't know if we set a time, but I
I,
was trying not to look at the timer because I didn't want to add to my nerves.
you didn't want
So
to
I
add
just
to your
kept looking
nerves.
away.
Well, I tell you what, I feel like an hour is a real cool, safe zone. Don't want to take up too much of people's time. I also realized that we were able to tackle the topics that we wanted to tackle. And so we got through it. We
We did.
really got through our first episode.
Oh, so exciting. Yay.
Yay! Yay us. So we're just going to give ourselves a little hand. All right, guys. Thank you guys for coming in. I could see all of you. I happen to be like, when I'm looking on my phone, I see so many of you on Facebook who are making comments, but for whatever reason, it's not showing up here on all of my little controls here. But I see you. I love you. And I thank you. We're going to do this again. We
We are.
coming. When are we coming again?
The last Sunday of the month.
The last Sunday of the month at 6 o'clock. Now, I don't know what date that is. Do you know what date that is?
I don't, but I know if you look at the calendar, it's just the Sunday before the 1st.
It is. It is. I had a lot of fun here tonight.
Me too.
So much fun. So much fun. So, you guys, get ready for us the next time. Get ready for us. Find you a friend. But also, you guys have conversations with each other. Conversations can change the world, because if we talk to each other, we learn more about each other, you know, that'll make us get along better. Might sound corny, but I really believe that. So until the next time, you guys be good. Tell the people
Yeah.
bye, Kalia.
Love y'all. Hold it down.